You might have seen a viral video making the rounds recently, and it asks a really tough question. Has Disney failed the Muppets? Well, today we're going to break down this analysis of all the criticisms being leveled against the company's handling of Jim Henson's most beloved creations.
Yeah, the source material does not pull any punches. It opens with that incredibly dramatic line, and right from the get-go, you know exactly where they stand. It sets this really critical tone for everything we're about to explore, and it hints at this deep sense of loss for what the Muppets used to be.
All right, so the first thing they jump on, and it's a big one, is something you hear immediately. We're talking about the voice of the star of the whole show, Kermit the Frog.
I mean, that was their gut reaction, just seconds into a new trailer. For them, it's simple. If you don't get the main character's voice right, the entire thing is just broken from the very start. It's an instant fail.
So they kind of get into the history here, and they draw this really important distinction. They're quick to point out that Steve Whitmire, who took over from Jim Henson, wasn't a perfect imitation, but he captured the spirit of Kermit. The real criticism is aimed at the current performer, Matt Vogel. They just flat out say he doesn't do the voice well, and that creates a huge disconnect for anyone who grew up with the character.
And to really drive this point home, the commentators compare Kermit to Disney's #1 guy, and they propose something they call the Mickey Mouse standard.
And here's the crucial argument. They claim Disney is incredibly protective of Mickey's voice. I mean, they'd never let an off-sounding Mickey get through, right? A new performer doesn't have to be a perfect copy of Walt, but they have to be close enough. The commentators just feel that same level of care was not applied to Kermit. They think the casting was just phoned in.
Okay, so it's not just the voice. The analysis then digs into the content itself, specifically the humor, or, the lack of it in the new trailer. They said when they watched the trailer, they didn't feel excitement, they felt dread. They argue that it just completely fails to give you a reason to watch. It's just a bunch of bland scenes and celebrity cameos that don't really spark any joy or curiosity.
And this quote, it just says it all really. They point to this one single joke between Seth Rogen and Fozzie Bear and say, okay, that's a Muppet-level joke. But it's the most backhanded compliment ever because they immediately follow it up by saying they hope he never shows up again. It just highlights how let down they are by the whole thing.
So then they pull back, they zoom out, and argue that this isn't just about one bad trailer. They frame it as just the latest chapter in this long, troubling story of Disney completely mismanaging the whole franchise.
And when you look at the timeline they lay out, you can really see their point. From their perspective, it's just a string of projects that were either canceled fast or just poorly received. And they argue that this new special, being a non-marketed feature, is just one more sign that the franchise is on the decline.
Which all boils down to their main takeaway, their big conclusion. And it's that Disney, even after all these years of owning the Muppets, fundamentally does not get what makes them special.
Okay, so if Disney's messing it up, what was the secret sauce in the first place, right? What was it that made the original show this massive cultural hit?
Well, according to them, that magic wasn't just an accident. They actually credit writer Jack Burns for creating this very specific style of comedy. It was just this relentless wall-to-wall storm of wonderfully bad jokes, but they were delivered with perfect timing and that special kind of charisma that, only a puppet can have. And they make this really fascinating point, that we've kind of lost the art of being dumb in a smart way. The original Muppets were masters of what they call sophisticated lowbrow, humor that was super silly on the surface, but it was actually crafted with a ton of intelligence and wit. And this right here, this really gets to the heart of what they're saying. They're contrasting the original style, fearless, fast-paced, cleverly dumb humor, with what they see now, which is this timid, bland, uninspired approach that seems almost afraid to tell a genuinely bad joke.
All right, this is where things get, a little wild. We're heading into the final section, and the source proposes a solution to all this that is startlingly futuristic and, for sure, very controversial. So they throw this really radical idea out there. What if we use technology to solve the authenticity problem? They actually propose creating a responsive AI that could take a new performance from a puppeteer and translate it, in real time, into the original voice of Jim Henson himself. And one of the commentators, he just leans right into it. He fully endorses the idea. For him, the argument is pretty simple. Authenticity is everything. The Muppets should sound like the Muppets, and if AI is the tool that gets us there, then so be it. This whole idea just cracks open a huge, fascinating debate, doesn't it? The source sees the pros, obviously. You'd restore the original voice, you'd fix the casting issues, but it also brings up these enormous questions. Like,
Is it still a real performance? Does this open up a massive ethical Pandora's box? And does it devalue the art of the living performers who've dedicated their lives to this?
And so, after all this, after this really bleak analysis, we're left with one last kind of tough question. Given this perceived string of failures, this loss of the original magic, is it maybe time to just accept that the Muppets' best days are behind them? That maybe some things are better left as a cherished memory?